Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Deja Vu here, bringing you Game 2 of this final series between SK Telecom 1 and KT Wolster. So here we go. It's going to be Game 2. SKT with a 1-0 lead after Bisu takes down Wookie. And this is going to be amazing. This is going to be fantastic. I don't even know what to say. This is going to be awesome. I'm so excited for this match. In the top left, in yellow, we have Fantasy, who I want to come back to him in a minute, but I think he is the most important player in this series. In the bottom left, for purple, we have the Great Flash, God himself, as he's well known. In the bottom left, this is Ground Zero, it's been pretty Terran favorite map overall, so not surprised to see a TVT here. This was the map where, if you remember from last series, or last series or 2 series ago, Flash actually took down Jangbi in this map, scouting out Jangbi's proxies and just basically manhandling Jangbi twice, really. Once on this map, once elsewhere. I forget what the other map was. It was kind of painful to watch, gonna be honest, but yeah, Flash absolutely is fantastic on this map, and yeah. That's why we're seeing him again. And up here in the top left in yellow, Fantasy once again, as I stated previously, I think he's the most important player in this series. We know Bisu can take down Flash if he, really for Bisu, if he can get some early harassment on Flash, he can win a game, absolutely. And that's what he did. If you'll remember last Winners League, I believe it was either Winners League or last season's Grand Finals. I forget which one. It was on Aztec, and Bisu put down a kind of forward gateway and just streamed zealots right into into Flash's One-Rex Expo, and his zealots were just so effective left and right that he was able to take an early game lead and then take a victory. That's how Bisu does it. I think Fantasy is the only other player on SKT1 that has a real chance to take down Flash, and I think Fantasy today. I see no reason why Fantasy could not do that today. Fantasy is an amazing player, and he's one of the only players in the league that can say, if he wins today, if Fantasy says win this game, and somehow he gets sent out in the ace match, which I don't think would happen, but he would be one of the few players that could have signature victories against every single member of TBLS. No one really beats TBLS consistently, but there is a chance here that we could see Fantasy gets a big signature win here, and start to maybe make his stand, maybe start to get that perceptive upgrade over into that same category of greatness that we do see from those great 4, potentially. And so I think that's what Fantasy's looking for. If you've seen if you've been following Toss Girl's medic dates, as they're calling him, the interviews she does with players, she's done Reach and Flash and Stork and a lot of the big name players. And she recently had an interview with Fantasy, and Fantasy tried to brush it off and just be like, I don't really think about the whole fact that I'm not in the same conversation with TBLS, But you could kind of tell that he cares. He cares because he's the greatest player that's not TBLS, and not to be getting that recognition has to be killing him. And so he's really trying to and really needs to, in a lot of ways, to beat down Flash and try and make his mark and jump in there, and he absolutely could do that here today. This is a great opportunity for him, and on the other hand, for Flash, he just needs to keep doing what he has been doing. Flash is almost robotic. It's non-stop excellence from him, day in, day out. There's no such thing as an off day for Flash. An off day for Flash, when he loses, just means that someone else played out of their mind and actually beat him. It's one of those things where I don't think he actually has off days. I think other people just have fantastic days and manage to take him down. For Flash, we already do have his expansion down, and for Fantasy, we are now getting that expo finally getting built a little bit later. He's actually lifting off his factory and taking it back home. Maybe trying to he put that as a natural expansion, maybe trying to let Flash think that there's something sneaky coming his way, but he's not really doing anything sneaky. He is getting a starport right now, and there's a big Fantasy fan. There's the SKT portion of the crowd starting to show up here a little bit, trying to show off that they can be great fans along with KT. KT has some great fans too. Actually, both teams have some great fans. It's hard not to be fans of the 2 teams. I mean, when you think about all the players that they have in their history, of course you have Boxer and Yellow and Reach, and yeah, it just goes on and on. I love Uv and Kingdom, and these are the 2 most storied franchises for Brood War, and it's hard not to be at least somewhat of a fan of, if not the teams, and at least the individual players on their teams. They're just so good, and some great characters. to point out as well. For Flash, it looks like we do have a couple more factories coming up as well as an armory. So for Fantasy, we do have that starport, and for Flash, we have the very early armory. So a little bit of divergent builds there in strategy. So we're going to be seeing earlier upgrades and Goliaths potentially for Flash. And for Fantasy, we're going to see more utility out of his early units. If that it's a dropship, if it's a Wraith, either way he'll be able to get a lot of utility out of his units, and some creative usage potentially as well for Fantasy. So two little different theories of how to start off here in the mid game, and we'll see how that plays out. There's the coach. Yeah, there's a coach. I want to say that was SKT's coach? Yeah, I think SKT's coach. I might be wrong about that. I think that's SKT's though. We'll see. If I remember correctly, SKT's coach usually wears black. But yeah, I can't recognize. I'm really bad with faces names. And there is the dropship, going to take those vultures and try and drop it right into Flash's base, and hoping to get some economic harassment. And are we seeing perhaps a kind of Flash's or Fantasy's version of BC strategy of eco-harass and early harassment to try and take advantage in this game? And that where we are. Here it comes. Here comes the drop. One vulture on the ridge, actually, and actually is going to be able to disrupt a lot of the mining. Not going to be able to eliminate, certainly, but it's going to be able to disrupt. And Fantasy is going to drop off his remaining vultures and stop the Goliaths from picking off his dropship. Going to save that dropship for later. And these vultures are picking off a couple of SCVs. It does look like they picked off 3 SCVs or so, and the dropship does get away as well. Not exactly what Fantasy was hoping for, but decent harassment. Certainly not a complete loss. And that vulture on the ridge getting another kill as well. So it looks like he's going to get a handful of kills. And keeping the dropship alive is certainly very important as well. Actually dropping a mine on that ridge, which is pretty hilarious. Just because if say Flash to stop any sort of further harassment on that, puts a couple Goliaths on there or something, they're actually going to eat the mine, which is hilarious, at least to me. I think that's hilarious. I think it's cool. I think it's creative. And a couple more vultures being dropped into the base, and Flash is going to lose no SCVs. Yeah, there you go. There's an SCV dropped off. And another one, and a third, and a fourth, and more are going to keep going down. We're going to have a 5th SCV go down to these 2 vultures. So Fantasy with some excellent harassment here, doing a great job of really sticking to his guns. Keeping that dropship alive was clutch, really clutch, keeping that dropship alive, and Flash actually making the decision actually to go for the vultures rather than making sure he killed off the dropship. And I think Flash maybe rethinking that a little bit at this point. It looked like the correct decision at the time, just to make sure that the economic harassment was minimized. But that dropship, the utility of that dropship still coming into play here, and it looks like another drop is coming in. I hear siege tanks sieging, and I feel like that may be on the ridge, and here it comes. Actually was not, but it is coming in here. The siege tanks sieging on the ridge and actually being picked up. Never mind. Actually getting picked up, doesn't want to lose those tanks, but continuing with the harassment. I'm loving this from Fantasy. This is fantastic gameplay from Fantasy. Fantasy and Bisu, like, watching this game, it just reminds me that Fantasy and Bisu, despite the fact they played different races, played like it seems like they have similar mindsets. They're very harassive, they're very multitask oriented, they both are very creative in their builds. It's really cool. I think it's really cool anyways, that the two players, as different as they are, do have a lot of similarities, and it probably helps them. If you can do this to each other, when you think about the creativity of Fantasy and Bisu, in practice they can do this to each other. That's pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool. And Flash establishing a contain here, actually a pretty strong contain. Looks like there's about 5 or 6 tanks. So he's getting kind of sick of this dropship harassment. So he's trying to change the theater of war more towards Fantasy side of the map. And how will Fantasy choose to respond here? He's putting a couple tanks on the ridge at where he would potentially take a third. That 9 o'clock position, it's hard to say who's actually going to be able to take that third, but it does look like Fantasy wants to establish a position there to end up taking that, but that would be very, very highly contested in a normal standard event, and we'll see how that plays out. That is definitely going to be very interesting. And actually what Fantasy's doing here, and I actually really like this, is he's setting up this, not a contain, but he's setting up a position where the reinforcements of Flash can't get back. So he's trying to isolate those 5 or 6 tanks up there and trying to establish a position where Flash can't reinforce them, and he will be able to eliminate those tanks with ease later on and establish a really strong position. It's a really nice tactical play by Fantasy, and now it's all about the execution. Does he have enough units there, or will Flash be able to perhaps pincer it or come in with his own units in overwhelming force and be able to take that down before anything else is before Fantasy is able to keep that spot reinforced. It's really interesting to see how this is going to play out. And with that early armory form, oh wow, there's a Valkyrie out for Flash. Excuse me? A Valkyrie, okay, really wants to kill that dropship. Oh, I see, three rates are out right now for Fantasy, and he's gonna go straight for that Valkyrie, and he is gonna get it. Yeah, those cloaked rates are going to get that Valkyrie, so that Valkyrie goes to waste, not able to do much of anything, and so Fantasy, good things, great things, not good, great things happening for Fantasy here in this game right now, and he's actually going to use these cloak rates, take down this Goliath, and then just use the aerial power of the Wraith to take down the tanks, and there's really nothing Flash can do about this. I mean, he can run away with this tank, but they're gonna die. I'm sorry, they're gonna die. There's really no way for him to save those tanks. Vulture's coming in here from the side as well to try and pick them off, so this is fantastic for Fantasy, unbelievably well played by Fantasy. This is great. This is what I'm talking about. This is not Flash's. Flash didn't screw up this game. Certainly not. Flash didn't screw up this game. Fantasy is playing fantastic. Excellent strategy. Excellent execution. And this is great play right now from Fantasy. And he could take this to a victory. You never want to count Flash out. Flash is one of those guys that you never count him out. Every time you think that he's dead, he manages to come back because he knows exactly what he needs in every situation in order to come back, and you really need to you just really need to absolutely outplay him for an extended period of time in a game in order to take him down. And Fantasy has outplayed him here at the early stages of this game. Where it looks like we're at about 15 minutes in, actually a little less than that, more like 11 minutes in. And Fantasy certainly is the one playing better at this point. Certainly not over. And Flash certainly doesn't think it's over either. I'm sure Flash has had many comeback victories in his career, and no reason to think that he's out of this one. But Fantasy in the driver's seat has the lead, taking his third base, and it looks like he might be taking his fourth base as well. So expanding heavily right now. He thinks he's, or I'm sorry, that's an engineering bay at the 9 o'clock position. He thinks he's got Flash very much on the back heel, which he does, and is going to try and take that into a bigger economic advantage. It looks like Flash is going to try to establish his third as well, potentially at the we'll call that the 630 position. It's his normal third, and that would be where Flash would take his next base. And Fantasy actually putting down a mine there, I believe, in order to make sure that no base goes up there. Pretty cool, good tactic. Usually used against Protoss, but also very effective against Terrans as well. Makes them waste a scan. That command center cannot be dropped, and Vulture on Vulture action is going to favor the Vulture with more health, obviously. So. Should not take too long for Flash to take that base, but he will be behind in Expos. Ooh, and a mine does go off on one of his tanks. Very painful, and there is Best, very pumped. Best showing off a lot of emotions here, and he's been jumping and cheering a lot today. I don't know if you guys have been watching. Every time they cut to the SKT scene, he has been very exuberant. He's been leading. He's like the leading cheerleader of SKT1. He has been very active in his love for his teammates and his support. It's been very cool to watch. I love it when I love it when the pro gamers show emotion. So many of them are so stone-faced for long periods of time. Then they'll win a game, they'll show a smile, they'll go slap hands or whatever, and then they'll kind of go back to being their stoic mode. It's great to see them show some emotion every now and then. And Flash is getting a little bit of concern here as he is starting to lose some more tanks to these cloaked wraiths, bringing in his own aerial force to counter, and Fantasy reacting very quickly and bringing his aerial force back before they're even able to before Flash is able to engage him. And Flash has invested heavily in this aerial force, 3 Valkyries along with that tank, or is that 4 Valkyries? That's a lot of Valkyries either way. And Fantasy really does not have that many wraiths, not enough to validate 4. It's just 4 or 5 Valkyries. This is too much, I think, from Flash. And Fantasy is not investing that heavily in his Air Force. It's just not his game plan for this. And I think that maybe this could end up being a huge mistake from Flash. I mean, he can develop that into his own Air Force eventually, but it's a mistake in the sense that here in the mid game he does have a significant, I think, tank count deficiency in this game, and these Vultures at the 630 position doing a pretty good job of delaying the expansion, and Goliath's coming in here almost picking off that Wraith. Yeah, that is 6 Valkyries. That is insane. That is insane. Yeah, just insane. What that does do though for Flash long term, should this game go very long term, he could actually dissuade Fantasy from ever going for big air. And if Flash maybe counters that by going big air himself, and he can buy that time to get some bases and establish his own big air and use that maneuverability to his advantage. Those Valkyries, while not technically, winning him the game, could certainly give him an ability to get that huge advantage with big air. Big air's mobility, of course, is just just dominant, and that's where that's how so many games end, is just with massive rates able to move around the map, pick off strategic positions, and join tanks and vultures in pushes, and to create an overwhelming force at point locations. Really, really cool. I actually love Big Air. I think Big Air is a great strategy. I think it's cool. We do have some vultures here at the well, I don't know. And Fantasy Star are going to start picking off some SCVs. I hate calling out clock positions. I hate that it's been like established that we need to call things by their clock positions, because I'm so bad at like figuring out what is that position, 11:30? Because there's 2 bases at 12 o'clock, which makes it hard. So I guess that one's 11:30, then the other one's 12:30 or something. Fantasy coming in here with a drop of his own on Flash's third with his 3 vultures, and he is going to be able to do some harassment here as well. And Flash looks like he's not noticing it that quickly. Look at the slowest reaction from Flash. I've never seen Flash react this slowly. What? What? That is I have never in my life seen Flash react that slowly to a drop or to harassment. I'm kind of shocked, actually. Yeah, I don't even know what to say. That is amazing. I cannot believe that he responded so slowly. And Fantasy able to dart in here. I think he may have picked off a tank before Flash's Air Force is able to usher away Fantasy's rates. Fantasy, really, I still think this entire game, I feel like Fantasy is really outplaying Flash, but Flash is able to stay in it, still taking bases, still maintaining his economy. You do see him taking the bases at the bottom right, 2 of the bases at the bottom right, the main and the natural. And just going to keep going, keep going. Keep taking this game as long as it can, and you know, in TVT, the longer a game goes on, I mean, it just gets so hard to predict. It's so hard to see who's actually going to be able to win, because so much of it is about how do you get your forces from one place to another. Do you have the aerial mobility? Do you have dropships? Are you going to be able to you know, use your SCV charges, which this is not, but SCV charges strategically in order to get your tanks in position and take down your opponents. I mean, there's so many little things that even though you're may technically be behind, there's so many ways that you can get back into it in TVT. It's one of the more interesting tactical matchups. Sometimes it can get kind of boring and stale, of course, when nothing is going on, but I think tactically it's one of the most interesting matchups. 3 dropships out now for Flash, and he is going to defend them with his aerial force, and they are going to go. This is actually a pretty significant drop. This could be very, very powerful. It's going to be at the natural expansion of Fantasy. Fantasy is going in for some economic harassment of his own. And where's Flash? Hey, Flash, scan. What? I'm kind of worried right now. Flash's reactions have been really, really slow. That scan was late. I mean, yeah, I mean, Flash, I think, lost a tank or 2 more than he should have in that. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's just me, and I'm expecting greater things from Flash than I should be. But I feel like his reactions are pretty slow today. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if there's something we don't know about. But it's pretty shocking to me to see him react that slowly to a drop. See him react that slowly to scanning. Just things look off. I'm just gonna leave it at that. The things look a little bit off for Flash here today, and Fantasy is taking advantage every step of the way, able to do a little bit of damage here, a little bit of damage there, and just slowly work his way into a dominant lead and trying to get to that point. SKT fans with their bunny ears, which no, can't say I don't like the bunny ears. Don't like them. Nope. Don't like them. Sorry. I do not support the bunny ears. I do not think they look cool or good. But you know, do what you want to be a fan. We've seen many crazy things done by fans. I did go to Hunger Games, and I saw some very interesting costumes for the Girl on Fire. I'm just gonna go with very interesting costumes. I mean, they were pretty good in a lot of ways. They were pretty good costumes. So, yeah, I'm just gonna go with that. And Fantasy actually saying after this, going in here with a huge number of tanks and just pile driving into Flash and taking down a lot of Flash's tanks. And Fantasy still has the tank advantage, and Flash has been pushed back. If he gets pushed back any farther, you can see where there's kind of a gap there where Flash has to use to get into the middle of the map. And if Flash loses that, Fantasy is going to be able to go wherever he wants. He will have map control. He can go to attack the bottom right. He can attack the bottom left. He can take every base on the map. So this is really important right now for Flash, that he not lose control of that choke. He needs to be able to move out into the map if needs be. He needs that ability, and he's starting to lose that control. And this is when things get really dicey for Flash in the situation. As great as he is, this is a really tough situation for him. Should he lose that spot, I think he's got to prioritize on that spot. And Fantasy, in addition, not only can he prioritize on that spot, he can start looking towards the bottom right, look to taking down some of those bases, and really start doing some huge economic harassment and damage that can lead him to that lead that will give him a victory. And I think this is going to become a crucial. The next 5 minutes or so are going to be really, really crucial to this game as to who's able to establish these positions, because it's getting to that point where Fantasy's ability in the earlier parts of this game is starting to overpower Flash, and here comes Fantasy just unsieging and charging in here with his tank force, and he is trying to take that gap. Like I told you, he's trying to take that gap and inching closer and closer. He's so close to having it right now. Flash is holding on by a needle's thread right now. It looks like he's down to 3 tanks, and he's bringing in some reinforcements. Looks like he's bringing in 4 or 5 tanks to reinforce, but he is really struggling to hold that spot. And where will Fantasy go from here? Will he continue pushing that spot? And it looks like he's got some science vessels out now as well. Perhaps D-Matrix? Or EMP for the cloaked wraiths. Maybe he scanned and he saw some cloaked wraiths somewhere and he's looking to emp them. That could be a potential as well. Not really necessary, I don't think, considering he's got so many scans. So, yeah, I'm going to think that that's for D-Matrix for some big push. I think he's going to go for a huge push, D-Matrix a bunch of units, and just charge his way in. I really feel that that could be a really cool possibility here, especially, you know, if he gets 2 D-Matrixes on each of those science vessels, he could have 4 tanks charge the line, soak up a lot of damage, soak up a lot of tank fire, and be able to siege up his own units in time and use his overpowering tank force advantage once he's able to get into position. Fantasy has taken the 3 o'clock base, it looks like, and Flash is loading up. It looks like he's up to 3, 4, 5, 6 dropships, so very, very mobile force right now for Flash. He's got the 6 dropships as well as the Valkyries. I thought he would go mass raids here, but he's actually going with the huge dropship fleet. To combo with the Valkyries, which is a little bit different than we're used to seeing. And there is a D-Matrix used to get his tanks a little bit closer, and more tanks are coming in, and Flash, with excellent reflexes this time, brings his dropships in to reinforce this position and is able to maintain this gap as well. So Fantasy putting pressure on both gaps right now, and Flash with that dropship fleet actually has the potential here to unsiege either of these groups and then drop in on top of one of these sieging positions that Fantasy has. So both players in interesting little situations here. Certainly potential for both players to come away with the victory. It's getting very, very tight, very, very close. It just feels like we're getting towards the end, because it just has that feeling that they have to have a huge engagement. Sooner or later, and it looks like it's getting close, the tank lines are just getting so close to Flash's bases that there has to be a huge fight at some point, and it's getting there. It is getting there. I'm actually like rubbing my hands. I am like pumped for this. I think this is gonna be really, really cool to see who's gonna come out ahead, and it is gonna be awesome. And Fantasy coming in here with vultures for more harassment, placing down mines all over the place, and he's gonna stop mining at this base. And Flash is gonna come in with dropships to clean this up and make sure that these vultures don't get into the main as well. Good job of that. Able to stop all but one vulture from getting in there, and that vulture will probably be annoying and get another kill or 2. Ooh, that mine goes off. Hopefully Flash notices that and repairs those siege tanks. That could end up being very, very painful, because instead of taking 2 siege tank shots to take down, they will only take 1, and that can be a huge difference. A lot of turrets going up for Fantasy here at the 3 o'clock and the 9 o'clock. So if there is a dropship play to take down either of those bases, Flash likely will lose a couple of dropships in that endeavor. So he's going to have to be careful when he does that he takes that into account. And it looks like Fantasy is saying, screw this. He's charging. He's coming in here with the vultures and the D-Matrix and the tanks coming in from behind. And a lot of tanks being cleared. +3 weapons for both players. It looks like nearly all the tanks for Flash have gone down. And here comes Flash for backdoor. Where's he going with these dropships? I'm not sure where he's going with these dropships, but he has lost control of his first gap. That first gap has been lost, and dropships coming in here for a Doom drop. It looks like, yeah, I think he's saying screw this, and he's going for an 8 dropship Doom drop right on top of the factories for Flash, or for Fantasy, and Fantasy coming in here with his wraiths, just trying to pick off some of these units. Not able to do a whole lot here, but this is going to be huge. If depends how well this is cleaned up. This is going to determine if this gets cleaned up relatively quickly and easily. This game is over. It's going to be it looks like it's going to be hard anyways for Flash or for Fantasy to clean this up. But if it gets cleaned up, it's over. If Flash is able to take down a lot of these supply depots and these factories and everything, he will be in decent shape to at least work his way back into this by having simply more reinforcements than Fantasy. But Fantasy still has such a huge force. I think the danger here for Flash is that Fantasy just unsieges and charges the bottom right. Flash has already used his dropships to reinforce, to attack the top left, and I think this is a great opportunity for Fantasy to just take down all the base at the bottom right and just win. And Fantasy's counter to losing all of his factories: build starports! Build massive numbers of starports at the top right. He's going to basically reestablish his entire base at the top right, and by reestablish his entire base, I mean reestablish all of his starports. And then he's going to go ahead and go big air. And I think this is going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because Flash does still have, it looks like, 3 Valkyries, and if he scans the top right and sees this coming, we could actually see the Valkyrie build up come again. And there we go. We do see a bunch of Wraiths appear and rally and get eliminated very, very quickly by Flash, and now Fantasy is going to pile drive into the main, actually, of Flash. Is going to get counter, losing production to try and take down Flash's production as well, choosing to go for the production rather than the minerals. Certainly, you know, 2 varying strategies, and this is the one that Fantasy's choosing. And if you look at the map, it really does look like Fantasy start off in the top right by the way the way the bases and the buildings look. That's what it looks like. But nope, Fantasy did start in the top left, and his tanks continuing to shell Flash's main. Fantasy coming out with more units right now, coming across the middle of the map. I think with those Goliaths, he's going to search for those dropships, see if he can pick anything off. And at the same time, I feel like Fantasy has a lot of supply depots left to build, because those starports are not building anything. So he probably has a lot of supply depots he needs to be building up right now. And Flash coming in here with more dropships, but they're going to come into a trap. There are a bunch of Goliaths here, and they're going to pick off a bunch of these dropships. It looks like only 3 left, so a lot of dropships do go down right now. And Flash is going to jump onto that high ground to try and do some harass on this this one base. Unfortunately for him, Fantasy just has so many bases that even if he stops mining at this one, Fantasy still has a lot more to go. So yeah, Fantasy not hurting from money still. Another mine goes off and takes out almost takes out a siege tank, and it looks like Fantasy is going to be able to clear out his natural expansion at the top right. We'll just call that his new natural expansion. That top right is his main now, and yeah, that's what we're gonna call it, because that's what it looks like. I know Valkyrie taking some pot shots from a missile turret at the 9 o'clock position, and fortunately for Flash, Flash could actually clear out the 9 o'clock position potentially, and if he can clear out the force of shelling his main, he could take 9 o'clock base. And Fantasy has not prioritized that base, has not put a lot of SCVs there, so that base is not mined out at all, and that would be a nice, fresh, delicious, yummy base for Flash to eat up and throw into his army value. And Fantasy looks like he's just going to not allow Flash to have that time, and he is starting to push into the bottom right, taking down a lot of the tanks. It looks like just a few tanks left in defense, 3 tanks left in defense, and the SCVs coming off the line. Very, very well done by Flash, bringing those SCVs perfectly off the line in order to try and save that base. But only 1 tank remaining right now. And does Flash have another dropship fleet? Does he have enough dropships and forces to fill those dropships to reinforce the spot? If he does not, this could very well be the game. I mean, if he loses these bases at the bottom right, there's just very, very little left for him. And Flash looks like he's starting to realize that, so he may be going for a counter of his own. Looks like he's starting to send his forces across the top of the map. Might go for a couple of those bases up there, see if he can take those out and try and even up the ecos at least. That's his goal right now. He wants to at least even up the ecos if he can. Looks like he's giving up that natural expansion. He's just gonna try and hold the high ground and keep that main, that third, and see if he can do some damage and keep himself in the game that way. And this is becoming a very, very tense game. Very, very close. I feel like Fantasy still. I feel like Fantasy has outplayed Flash throughout this game with just excellent play. But Flash continues just keep himself in it. He just keeps himself in it, and Flash needs to scan. Flash needs to scan. Flash needs to scan. There's the scan, but it's too late, and there's too many Wraiths, and that is going to be game. Best cheering once. Well, I love seeing Best cheer. Best looks happier than his teammates. Everyone looks happy over there, but Best just looks. He just looks so happy. I don't know. I like seeing happy people. Best looks so overjoyed right now, and he looks like he's just totally pumped and having the time of his life, and that he just looks awesome right now. He's great. And these Wraiths just continue to shoot at Goliaths. Don't even care that Wraiths are bad against Goliaths, but not with this number. When you have that many Wraiths, it doesn't matter. And they are just going to pick off everything. And Flash, we should be seeing a GG. Maybe not soon. I guess he still has enough to stay in it. But Flash is definitely struggling right now. He's almost out of mining base. He's got the bottom right, and that's basically it. Flash has just the bottom right left, the main and the third. Fantasy has the top right main, the top right natural. He should have. I'm not sure why he's not mining there. He's got the third at the top right, and he's got 3 o'clock. So he's got a lot of bases still mining. So that is going to end up taking its toll. And Fantasy coming in here to the bottom right with his Wraiths is going to pick off the missile turrets and is going to clear this out. Look at Jesus! Look at all these Wraiths! More and more just show up every single second, and this is starting to get a little bit outrageous. Yeah, this is just starting to get outrageous. And here comes Flash for a push out onto Fantasy's forces onto Fantasy's contain, and this is going to be very, very important that Flash breaks this, and breaks this with ease. And that is exactly what he is going to do, going to break it with ease, and he's going to have a lot of forces left over to try and use here, but still, that is a tank-heavy force, and he needs Goliaths. He needs lots of Goliaths. There cannot be enough Goliaths for Flash at this moment. Not possible. If he has 20 Goliaths, that is not enough. If he has 30 Goliaths, that might be enough. But yeah, he needs a lot more, and just not enough Goliaths. And here we do see some more streaming in here, but they're coming in piecemeal. They're not coming in the mass bulk that you really need, and Flash unable to organize his Goliaths into that big ball that you really need to take down this number of Wraiths. And it looks like this game may be coming to an end. Sieging the bottom right, Best showing off how he has a whole lot of love for his teams continuing. And yeah, here comes when SCVs are off the line to try and take down unsieged tanks. That's a problem. That's when you know that you've really gotten yourself into a pretty pickle. And Flash is going to run out of mining here at the bottom right. It looks like that third base at the bottom right is going down as well. Flash is basically not mining any longer. Flash is basically not mining, and this game is just about over. Fantasy is going to take down Flash on ground zero. Well, not big upset, but a slight upset, but certainly a huge win for SKT1. Not what I was talking about last game, when I was talking about like how you strategize a game series and how you, or a series of games, and how you plan that, and how you plan out your victory. This game is not part of KT's plan of victory. KT's plan of victory is Flash wins, Stat wins, one of the Zergs win, and then Flash wins the ace match, or potentially Stats wins the ace match, since it is on Neo Chain Reaction. Flash losing is not part of said plan. Flash losing is a huge blow to them, and they're gonna have to lean on Stats, and they're gonna need 2 Zergs, not 1. They're gonna need 2 Zergs now to come away with a victory, in order to just to force an ace match, or they're gonna need a sweep by their Zergs and a win by Stats to get out of this. Yeah, this is not going to be really good. Assuming, of course, that we don't see Reach, which I think is pretty safe to assume that we're not going to see Reach in the Grand Finals. As much as I would love to, I don't think we're going to. I think we're going to see all 3 Zergs and Stats close out for KT. And we have no idea who's going to come out for SKT. A little bit of a different situation over there. They have a little bit more depth, not a lot more, but a couple more players I think that they can throw around. Yeah, as this game comes to close, in addition to the big 3, Fantasy, Bisu, Best, they also have okay, there's GG from Flash. They also have a few more players. They have S2, Sue, Sack, and Rain. So they have a few more players that we could potentially see. So we'll see how that ends up playing out. And Flash looks devastated. Fantasy pumped, and he is dancing around. And those are T1 cheerleaders in short shorts. That's pretty awesome. I approve. And yeah, oh man, Fantasy is so pumped. And I wonder if that's like his family. I wonder if like all the families have like a section pretty close to the stage, so that way their kids can come say hello. Is that a bass drum? That dude has a bass drum. That's awesome. That was cool. I don't know if it's fake. I'm hoping that it's fake, because those are really loud. I play bass drum for years, so I'm assuming that is a fake one, because that could be very, very distracting. But Fantasy with a huge win, very, very important upset over Flash, giving SKT a huge 2-0 lead in the series. We're going to go on to the 3rd set as SKT tries to put a stranglehold on this series going into Game 3. I will see you